Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Marguerite Rigoglioso YouTube channel. Thrilled to have you here for my Bridging Dimensions show. Today, I have the amazing guest, Claire Sierra, who is truly a high priestess of the Magdalene. And we will be in a deep conversation about all things Magdalene and Jesus, Yeshua, as also our sexual and relationship healers and guides. So we are inviting you to like and share this video, to subscribe to my channel, and check out, our new course, which is called Sacred Relationship and Sexual Healing with Magdalene and Jesus. And the link for that is in the show notes below the video, because some of what we're going to be talking about today is going to be much more deeply amplified for your healing in that course. And so we encourage you to come on to that. But before we go any further, let me just introduce Claire Sierra. She's an MA, she's an LFT, she's an art therapist, a spiritual counselor, author, and the founder of the beautiful The Magdalene Path, Awaken the Power of Your Feminine Soul. So, welcome, Claire.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Yeah, we always have a deep dive, don't we?
I know. Yeah. Good fun ensues.
That's right. Well, you've been at it with Magdalene for a while now. So why don't you share with us a bit about your own relationship with her and why you find her so interesting and compelling in your life?
Oh, wow. There's a lot I could say there. But I'll start by saying, yeah, it has been a while. Magdalene was tapping me on the shoulder for a long time before I answered the call and said yes to writing the book that she wanted to come through me, The Magdalene Path. I was really in a place where I was hungering for my purpose. My life on the outside looked really, really good, checked all the boxes of accomplishment and success. And yet inside, I really felt quite flat, and I felt like there was more. And so when I was asking about purpose and I was connecting in with my own guidance through a sacred writing practice that I've been doing for decades called Listening to Spirit, I kept getting the nudge to be part of the awakening of the divine feminine. And when it first started coming to me, it had to be probably in the 90s. I mean, nobody was really talking about the divine feminine very much. And certainly nobody was really talking about Mary Magdalene, but I was on the hunt for her and would search her out in different books and, actually this is back in the day of actually having to go to libraries to look things up. We didn't just have the oracle at our fingertips. But she kept coming to me, and I kept asking, and I kept sort of saying, does it have to be that? Because I just had so many of my own shadows of resistance and insecurities and whatnot around all that. But persist she did, and I did as well. I kept asking, and I kept getting the same answer, and so I realized, yeah, this is the thing I should do. I had really no idea when I said yes that it would become the Magdalene Path. I just knew that I was being called to tell her story in a new and different way. And what I really discovered is that by losing the Magdalene, we lose a part of ourselves. When we lose this great teacher, healer, anointer, what I would call a priestess, when we lose her from the dominant story, regardless of whether one is practicing Christian or not, which when all this happened to me, I was not a practicing Christian, although I'd been raised Catholic. But I learned through this, her message to me was quite strong, that women have been disconnected from our divine essence, and that part of connecting with her is about connecting to our own divine essence. It's not about worshiping her.
Right.
I'm sure believe that and know that too.
Same message from the Christo Sophia family. They're like,
yes,
No, we're here to mirror and show you what's already in you. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And even there's hints and glimmers, not even hints, but it says even in the Bible in a few places, Jesus says, I do these works to show you what you can do too. And somehow, even though it's there in plain sight, the dominant narrative has been to turn him into a god. And I addressed that in some of the writings that I received. And so, that he did not mean to become deified in the way he did. He wanted to show us the way. They are teachers of possibility. And so my practice was to spend time in meditation and then to journal and connect with her. And I would hear her voice basically speaking to me, and I would type it, I would write it down. And then I had all these writings that were about all kinds of different things. Some of them were personal to me, some were personal to the world. I mean, really, it was focused on what does this mean for modern women? This isn't about just hashing over history, but she did want to tell some of the tales of the untold story, her story that had gotten forgotten or disappeared. And that's when I was able to kind of craft all that together uh, through the process of writing and editing, which, as you know, is such a long and drawn out process. The Magdalene Path book is what resulted, and that was 10 years ago. So I have been on this path on a very outward level for at least that long. Yeah.
Wow, I've gotten chills a couple of times as you've been speaking about um, your experience, and what an extraordinary thing to devote your time to the reception and then the writing and the crafting. That is a goal of mine, is to clear the decks for, an oracle book or two where I just go into these open states and just write it all down and, just
Yeah.
put it together, weave it together. So tell me, Claire, what is your favorite aspect of who Magdalene is and why? Like, how do you, because every woman resonates with some combination of aspects a little more than others. What's it for you?
It's so true. It's almost like we could travel through the chakras, Magdalene through the chakras, and your upcoming course really addresses that second chakra and kind of the first and third as well. I mean, all of them, of course, will weave in there. And then others are really more focused on the sort of more esoteric aspects that are maybe more crown chakra. Some people are more focused on the archetypal aspects. For me, I think I'm unique in that I kind of span a lot of them because I'm very interested in the research, the historical aspects of her, the archaeological data that's coming through that kind of because it supports the channeled. I guess I can say that now. 10 years ago, I would not call this channeled material, maybe even 5 years ago, but I mean, that's kind of a shorthand way to talk about these divine downloads that I received. So for me, I mean, one of my favorite aspects of her is as a divine guide, obviously, and that she's very available to me and that she's very available to a lot of others as well. And I also see her as being, as a teacher of the way, which is the way of light and love, which is the path of the heart and the path of compassion. I think that's certainly really an important aspect. And for me, in a way, has been my most growing edge just because of who I am personally and how I tend to focus my energy in the world, my upbringing and all of that kind of thing. I'm not really one of those sort of floaty priestess fairies kind of people. I'm more like real. I mean, despite the fact that I do this pretty esoteric thing of connecting and, channeling Mary Magdalene, I see myself as pretty down to earth and practical and somebody who like I want to know, okay, these higher level ideas, how do we embody them in our lives? And it's one of the things that I love about you, and I think why we connect so well, because we hold that esoteric stream, but then it's like, okay, but what are we going to do with this? How are we going to make this? How are we going to make our lives better? How am I going to make help the lives of the women who and men who are working with me. How are we going to make that better?
Yeah.
But when I decided when I was kind of perusing or thinking about some of the questions you might ask, and I went into the book. I've been using it as an oracle. I didn't do this for a long time, but I had a lot of readers tell me that they would use the book as an oracle. So eventually I was like, hey, I wonder what that's like. And so I went into the book and I opened to this section like straight off the bat as I was kind of holding that question of what aspect of her is most important. That is a good question, Marguerite. What question, what part is most? The one I opened to is anointer, teacher, and leader. It's a section of the book where she talks about her life. So that aspect of her as the anointer, teacher, and leader, I think is so fundamental because we've lost that. That's the essence of who she was and who she is. In her time, that's who she was. And they would call that, and I will say again, I'll call that a priestess. That's a word that's really been dropped from our lexicon. I know it's common in your circle and folks that are watching this. It's probably not an unfamiliar term, but it's surprising to me how how much people, how common it is for people to lean over to me and say, well, so what is a priestess? And if you type it into documents or search fields, it'll come up with a little line under it because it's not really recognized. So I think the aspect of her as the anointer, and we'll maybe talk more about this as we get into the Easter mysteries. I think there's a lot there to all of those pieces that that were really just in some ways in the beginnings of discovering, because it was hidden. It's been hidden from us.
Yeah, yeah. So, this is premiering on Good Friday of the particular year that we are filming. So, let's go into that. What do you find so compelling about Magdalene's role in the Easter mystery, and how is this related to anointing? Maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So I always like to say I'm not a biblical scholar and I don't play one on TV. But what I do know, and others say this as well, is she is mentioned in all four canonical gospels around the Easter story. When I say that, for folks that don't know, the four canonical gospels are the four main gospels in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And she is there throughout. She's one of the only ones that's throughout. In fact, she's mentioned in the New Testament more than any other woman, just as an aside.
I know
Even
you
more
can
than,
barely find Mother Mary, you know.
yeah, I
But
know, I
Magdalene's
know,
there. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, exactly. And there's that's a good rabbit trail to explore, as I know
And
you
I
have.
do my next
Yeah,
book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, coming out in July, but I digress. Okay.
I can hardly wait for that book. I'm
All
so
right.
excited.
Yeah.
So anyway, she is named, and she is present. She's present. Well, we don't know that she's present, but we presume and have seen that she's present at the Last Supper. We see that through the paintings of that where they get cleaned, and we realize, oh, that one to Jesus' side isn't really a guy; it's really a woman. Um, so we can assume that that's Magdalene. Um, she's the one that was witness to the death. She was at the foot of the cross when all of the apostles were like, we're out of here. This is too intense, too scary. I'm sure it was very dangerous. I mean,
That's
you
right.
know, and she's the one who anointed him prior to this. I'm kind of telling the story out of order. She's the one that anointed him. And when she anointed him, she signaled the beginning of something. And
Right.
that's actually the moment when he became the Christ, because Christ means the anointed one.
I just get
So,
chills. It's like
ah,
the feminine next level of the baptism that John the Baptist gave him, which was the purification. And now the
yes,
anointing is a similar pouring, in this case,
yes,
oil, aromatic oils, and maybe even, um, sacred hallucinogenic oils. We've
right,
talked a lot about that.
yes,
And that prophetic moment of
yes,
we're almost marking his coming death, right?
Right. And people in the Middle East at that time would have recognized, would have known what this signaled, because it was part of a long standing history in the region. Many cultures, many had met, where there were many stories of these similar god goddess pairs where the king, so to speak, is sacrificed. And we see
Yes.
that playing out through the pagan, the earth-based, European earth-based traditions as well. But anyway, so the anointing really signaled the, sort of the beginning of the end, so to speak, or the start of like the next stage. And I believe that they didn't expect what was going to happen. They didn't expect that he was going to die. They weren't necessarily planning. They knew that that could happen, but I don't think that they were like full on, like, yeah, let's do this. Um, but so, but they knew that they were starting something that was big and notable. And she was the one that was there, and she was the one that touched him. She was also the one that, nursed and dressed his body at the tomb with the other women. And all of these things signal the fact that she was his wife, companion, beloved of some sort. Because in that culture, only the wife or beloved companion would be allowed to touch him. And so by writing her out of the story, we really lose, well, I mean, just everybody can take a moment and think about that. Like, the story we're told is about basically all of these men doing or not doing all of these things, when actually there was a circle of women, of which she was a major part and the leader of, um, that were part of this tale, and that there was a real union, there was a real lineage that was there and being forged. And my understanding of it is, we don't have a lot of knowledge about that because it's been taken away from us, but what they were doing didn't just kind of pop up out of nowhere. They were part of a mystical tradition that was connected to the Essenes, probably a branch of the Essenes called the Nazarenes. He wasn't from Nazareth per se. He was a Nazarene. It was a, a, a religious sect, and the Essenes were quite ascetic, but from what I gather, the Nazarenes were not. They were still working at very higher, more esoteric levels,
Wow.
mystical, the mystical path. It was the mystical path of that time. And so Magdalene, part of the Easter story, yeah, she was really a big part of the Easter story, and we don't know it. So again, we lose this fact of, like, as women, it's like, I think as humans, when we're consuming or digesting or experiencing any sort of story or media, we're kind of always looking for the people that we relate to. And the
Mhm.
people we relate to are often like us. And the reason they're like us, they're often same gendered. When there's no same gendered people really in the story, or they have this background role, we're kind of like, oh, then I guess isn't really for me. When in fact it really was. And from there, my lensing of it is that and this is not my own, that she was there for a while and then needed to escape. There's a whole story about that. And then she was in France, where she continued to teach and heal and proselytize about the way for her whole life.
Yeah.
So it didn't end with her. It didn't end with the death. It changed, and it kind of split. Peter and the bros kind of went one direction, and then a whole group of people, Magdalene and others, went another,
That's right.
physically as well as energetically.
Yeah, there's so much to what you're saying. Let's roll back to something you said about, obviously, a lot of people now are understanding the very strong possibility that not only were Jesus and Magdalene lovers, but they were partnered, sacred partners, husband and wife, and so forth. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm teaching the course Sacred Relationship and Sexual Healing with Magdalene and Jesus, because it's time to go there. now about them as sexual role models and mentors. Do you see them in this way? And do you see them, let's talk about them as sexual beings.
Yeah, I think that is a super edgy topic. Let's just say that from the get-go. And what and so what I know and feel and believe, so what I know is that they were partners in sacred union. They taught sacred union. Everything about Jesus's message, when we actually look at what he said and what he was teaching, and whether we're looking at the main gospels or we're looking at the extra gospels, which are sometimes called the Gnostic gospels, which were gospels that were used and circulated freely up until about the 400s. So they were, these are not like, lesser obscure texts. I mean, they are now, but everything points to the fact that they were a couple. And so if they were a couple, then yeah, it's pretty darn likely that they were sexual partners. And what I think is sort of interesting about the whole thing is the way in which sex has become desacralized in our culture, to the point where it's even edgy for us to be talking about this, where it's even like your emails that go out have to couch it in certain ways so they don't get caught in people's spams, right?
That's
Because
right.
sex is
We're getting banned on social media for
yeah,
having
because
certain words.
wow, like
Prostitute,
wow,
sex,
that's censorship.
religion.
It's right. So I mean that, just to step back and see how crazy that is, that that our only way of relating to sex is really as pornography, really, because that's
Yes,
why they're banning you, because they think, oh, it must be porn.
that's right.
And porn is apparently a big part of the internet. It always blows my mind to hear that, but because it's not the part that I've ever been associated with, but it's apparently a big part of it. But so they taught partnership, and they were walking a path of sacred union, and they were modeling a path of sacred union. And in fact, the Cathars, the people who took their teachings that we know the most about, not that we know so much, but they were in the south of France after Mary Magdalene was there. She was teaching in the temple steps of Marseille and around the whole region, Provence and the Languedoc. And that became, those folks became known as the Cathars. I don't think that's what they called themselves, but that's what they're known now of, because of the writings of the inquisitors who did their best to eliminate all of them,
That's right.
genocide them. But those folks all taught in teaching pairs. They all taught in male-female pairs. Wow. That's not to say they didn't also teach male and male pairs, or two females wouldn't go out teaching, but it was quite common for them to teach in male-female pairs, which shows me something about the lineage that they come from, because they were really following that lineage. So there's that. And if they're teachers of sacred,
really fascinating, because I have not studied deeply the Cathars.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that. Amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty fun. They didn't have churches. They met like in the forests and fields or in people's homes. They were really, I think, much more kind of more the hippie movement of it, of Christianity in a way. They were really focused on the teachings of the heart and the way of love, and the practices. They were more focused on the teachings of Jesus, not the teachings about Jesus, from what I can gather. And there are still people that carry that lineage, and for reasons that are pretty obvious, they've kept it pretty secret, because for that hundreds of years it was quite dangerous.
Yeah.
But if we see Magdalene and Yeshua, Jesus's name in Aramaic, his original language is Yeshua, and as if we see them as teachers of sacred union, then how could it not include sexuality? And what are we missing? and why has this been hidden from us? That's what I'm really curious about. And I'm sure your class probably goes into it in a super
Oh,
juicy way.
I just blew the lid off everybody in class 1 this week on the human sexual history and
Yeah.
what is said in these Gnostic Gospels about it in black and white. There it is. It's an archonic attack and deception from the very beginning of the creation of the human race. So the Sophia Christ family came in to clear that, clear
Yeah.
humanity of that. It's all based in sex. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about the sexual predation of humanity, which is why they would have received what I call the sexual stigmata.
Ah.
So Mary Magdalene gets pegged as the prostitute. Mother Mary gets pegged as the celibate virgin. Jesus gets pegged as some, eunuchy kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, right, they're all described in sexual terms. And like when you start really realizing that, you understand this is a whole part of the archonic deception.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though these beings came in to help lift the shackles off of humanity as regards the siphoning of their sexual energy and their
Yeah.
reproductive material, their story gets twisted around and inverted by
Yeah.
these very same forces, So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the why, anyway, I'll let you respond to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just think that by making our sexuality so dirty and sinful, and I think so many people are so conflicted. And we're really taught, as you're saying, we're taught to be conflicted about it. And that has really come through from the religious teachings, from the church.
Yeah, the
And that,
inversions.
and
And meanwhile, what are they doing? There's
I
a
was going to
whole
say they have,
pedophilia thing going on that
yeah,
finally got
exactly.
exposed. And we're told there's levels way underneath that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much shadow. Of course, of course, there's going to be so much shadow, regardless of at what level or how you want to parse out what's happening and why. Um, yeah, it's pretty clear that's the case. Um,
So I have a question for you.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if we think of Magdalene and Jesus as happy partners, let me have you describe, going into your imaginal space, what is their relationship like? Let's bring this out for ourselves, for people, because I think a lot of us are so into the book knowledge of it and then like, oh, the mysteries of working with the light. But what does this look like to you? How would they have walked the path together? Describe their relationship.
Well, I like to think that. Well, I think we need to be careful not to idealize or idolize. And I think it's so easy to do that with folks that have more books and things written about them than anybody else, and and have been dead 2,000 years. So it's like you're saying, it is really our imagination. And in my imagination, I'd like to think they had their good days and bad days. They had a lot of love, and they probably had their challenge points. They had shadow and trauma and misgivings and irritabilities and everything. We're not really taught to see Jesus as human and having human frailties, yet we do see in places like clearly he loses his temper more than a couple times, but we're not really allowed to say that. I guess I just have, but
Yeah.
he so and so it's sort of like the swing of it. It's like she's a prostitute. No, she's a divine being of light. And it's like, yeah, and so
Yeah.
probably there's something in between. I mean, it's also quite possible to me that because of her priestess and temple trainings, and because of what's been hidden for us about the what we could call sex magic, that sounds so hot and kind of scary and titillating, but was probably, there were probably teachings and trainings that were going on at the levels, at different levels of different initiations. And
Yeah.
so, so it's possible to me that, yeah, maybe there were some sacred sexual practices that she was engaged in and involved in. Maybe some of those predate her. Maybe that has something to do with her relationship with John the Baptist, who some believe was, he was really slated to be the Messiah. And then, there's a lot of grappling for, the reins of power in certain ways, I think probably going on more than we tend to kind of see everything in this golden glossed uh, view of what their time was like, because, in the absence of information, we make shit up.
Right.
And the church power, the church has had something to gain from us seeing Jesus in this certain light.
Mhm.
And so by seeing him in a certain light, and them as being the purveyors of him, or the access points, or
Yes.
the gatekeepers, then we go there.
They're his
Um,
PR agents, and
exactly.
they spin his
They're
and
his
all of their
handlers.
images. They're his handlers. They spin and tend to think they own the images. So, right, I'm
Absolutely.
intrigued by what you're saying here, because obviously there was like the golden aspect of them together.
Sure.
And knowing that they incarnated at a time, the Roman Empire, a dark period, they
Right.
incarnated into a taken over planet where people have their traumas, and all that stuff is coming through the lineages. Um, Probably Magdalene had it in her lineage. Now, it may well be that Jesus did not have come in with that karmic trauma and things like that.
True.
But
True.
okay, so he had a leg up, you know. Um, but let's talk about what their golden relationship might have looked like,
Hmm.
and what they might teach us about the not so golden part of the relationship. Let's look at the golden, because I think it's important for us to image and imagine a
Hmm.
Lemurian Eden-like kind of perfect
Yeah.
relationship. What what
Hmm.
what would this have looked like?
Well, the image that I keep seeing is them sort of face to face, clasped in a sense, them, cleave, is that cleaved together, or is
Yeah.
cleaving separating? That sense of them being together. I get images of hand holding, this kind of hand holding, that sense of them being there for each other. Then
Mhm.
the sense of them, like, where clearly they were living in a time where, well, he was the first feminist, absolutely, as far as I can tell,
Yeah.
where he talked, he treated her as an equal. That really pissed off a lot of the closer in disciples. We see evidence of that.
Yes.
um but they were in a time where she, of necessity, was sort of a step or a half a step back from him. He was in the front. He was sort of the main dude,
Yeah.
the main teacher. But I also sense that she was a lot more out there and a lot more present than we were given, than we've been given uh access to.
Right.
And so, my sense of them is teaching and healing and working together. There was a passage that I received when I was that's in the book about them. And when Jesus came to me in the Magdalene Path book, I was, to be honest, like, and what do I do with this? Oh my gosh, because
Yeah.
a who do, like, who are you to say you're channeling Jesus, right? There's that piece of it. There's the piece of it of, like, my own unresolved drama or trauma around being raised Catholic, and I was really angry at Jesus for a really long time about Christianity. And it was really through the writing of the book that I realized it's not Jesus' fault what happened in Christianity, because most of it isn't really what he taught. So
That's
I
right.
went through a whole forgiveness piece about that. But in that passage too, he really talked about them healing together, that they did this energy work that I think they called bridging light. I'd have to go back and look. But they were basically creating a rainbow bridge. And it's part of how they did the healing. It's part of how they did the healing of, like, Lazarus raised from the dead, and some other child got raised from the dead. Lots of healing. That she was absolutely part of that. She, and probably also the other women who would have been priestesses, would be holding the energy, but that they would connect to each other. They would hold the person in, that they were healing between them, and they would connect to each other, and then through that bring that light in.
Oh my
So,
God. I love that. I now know what my homework assignment is going to be for next week's class, which
uh-huh.
have everybody write their golden their golden image of Magdalene and Jesus together, because as we write this, we create it in our lives. And
Yeah.
I love that you received that image of them through
Yeah.
the circuit of
Yeah.
healing,
Yes.
because we have
The
to
part,
imagine
so
that.
the, I get the part that I feel like is important to underscore is that as we connect to this golden image of their relationship, that we align ourselves with Magdalene or Yeshua. You can pick either one, but I'm focused in a female body, and my connection is with her. So others might choose to do it in a different way, but by doing that, we want to remember, like, there's, fine line between deifying and projection and all of that. So we want to have that golden image, but also, yes, be bringing it into us, and also really, I think, be really alert to not how do I want to put it? It's like there's a way in which that golden image, we can use that golden image to self-flagellate
Yeah,
in
make
those moments.
ourselves lesser,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. Like we snap at our partner, or we're feeling less than holy, or not
Yes.
feeling sacredly sexual, or whatever it might be, and then feel like, oh, see, well, if I was good enough, or if oh, they can do it, but I can't, make ourselves lesser than. Exactly.
And that's an important thing, because don't you know, that has come up a lot for me in the creation and carrying out of this class. I'm
Uh, of
I'm
course.
having to look at, my own relationship stuff and what's coming up. And it's like, oh no,
Right,
I,
right,
God, I'm feeling even less than perfect now because we just had a fight and the class
right,
is starting tomorrow, and it
right.
all this stuff, right? So it's like,
Absolutely.
how do we navigate this? Um,
Yeah.
using calling on them as the mentors and teachers that they are for relationship and sexuality,
Hmm.
not deifying and not letting that image continue to make us feel lesser than, right? This is a whole
Exactly.
a magical feat in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm making
Yeah,
notes here.
yeah.
Um,
I think it's really powerful, because I think it starts to tap back into that root of the unworthiness and the not divine that we started by talking about. That when the church removed Magdalene, and probably happens for men too in different ways as well, but for women to recognize that we are actually divine beings, but we haven't been taught that. And so just because we
right.
start to think that and feel that about ourselves doesn't mean we don't have other complete competing stories and beliefs that are sometimes maybe sabotaging us or go contrary to that.
Yeah.
And Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can fully relate to that. It's like, yeah, we offer these courses and we're absolutely not perfect people, but yet we have something we want to share and we have a particular view. And, we have our good moments where, we're really we're embodying this, but that doesn't mean we're embodying 24/7,
No,
365.
yeah, I mean it can get really weird to start getting in that soup of like your own imperfections, even as you are showing an image of potential inspiration, if not
Yeah,
perfection for people.
yeah, yeah.
So okay, so I'll add to what you're saying that we know from the Gospel of Philip that they kissed a lot. There's no
Uh-huh.
on the mouth because, of course, someone took out the exact word of where it was that Jesus kissed her in that
But
text.
can I just jump in there? I was thinking
Yeah.
about that the other day because people always talk about, oh, but we don't know where. And it's like, it
Where
doesn't
the
matter.
hell else?
Where else?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, wait, is it any less sacred if he's like kissing her all over her shoulders or something? I mean, does
Right.
that mean that's a platonic relationship
Yes,
then? No.
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like
Because, friends are always kissing each
kissing all
other.
over the place. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
okay.
know.
So we know they kissed, and as you're saying, we know from the Gospel of Philip that three walked with Jesus: Mother Mary, her sister Mary, another Mary, which that's a whole other story of their names, and Mary Magdalene. So yes, they were like this triangular circuit, right?
Yeah.
And so so we do know that like it's all kind of there, like
Yeah.
a lot of the pieces are there. So they walk together. It's clear that Peter, especially, but some of the others were jealous of the relationship because they're like, why don't you love us the way you love her?
I know.
Or why? No, they said, why do you love her more than us? And he said,
Yeah.
you should be asking, why don't I love you as much as I love her? You know what I mean? So he's like, look at yourself. All right, what would be the answer to that? Well, you're being a jerk. You're denying me
Right.
3 times on the cross. You're,
Yeah. Right. You're
betraying
big and
me.
stinky.
Yeah, 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 you don't get my teachings. I mean,
Right.
so he was kind of dramatic in that moment, let's say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then there are so many of these gospels. I was listening back to the course that I taught, the Seven Mysteries of Magdalene, which also is available to people. And I'm like, sifting through these gospels, it was like this revelatory experience because Jesus praised her in several instances, like with the highest praise any human being could ever be described as. He's like,
Yeah.
you are the full divine Sophianic woman,
Yeah.
basically, is what he
Yeah.
said, right? So
Yeah.
the guy is like in awe of this human woman walking around the planet. And so, those are some of the wonderful things. So now let's shift it. And in our last little while here, what would they have been up against? Jesus. He's a compelling guy. A lot of people want to be around him. And there's Magdalene dealing with that, Then
Yeah.
she's called a whore. Why was that? Maybe she had a lot of people attracted to her. So let's talk
Right.
about what were kind of the issues that they might have dealt with that help us feel a little bit mirrored in that we're not alone in our trials regarding relationships. What do you think, Claire?
Wow. Such a big question.
Has anyone even
Oh.
really even honestly ever asked this question on the planet? You know what I mean? Well, a
Sure.
little bit Claire Hartsong started getting into it. She says a few interesting things about,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
which I can't even go there
Yeah.
because I'm like, that is too much for me to handle. But whatever. You tell me,
Which means it's a lot.
which means it's a lot. Because yeah, if Marguerite is having trouble.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so what do you think? Let's just open up your oracle. What are they telling us?
Well, I guess I want to kind of what's really coming to me again is this whole piece about how the church made Yeshua, Jesus, celibate, took away his partner, both teaching and love partner. And it's sort of like, to me, that seems like a huge clue that there's something there. It's like sometimes when something's taken away, it just disappears, and then we don't pay attention to it. And now I think what's starting to happen in this conversation and your course and other things, it's like, well, what about that? Why is this so sinful? Why did they try so hard to, you know, to disappear the relationship? Like, what power is really available to us that we have been, um, that's been hidden from us, that's been kept from us?
That's right. It's
Yeah.
under seal right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
what would happen? Or what are they afraid would happen? What were they afraid would happen if we had that? And
and
like
we're
you're
getting
saying,
it now.
some
We're
and
starting.
some of that predates them as well, but it certainly became focalized there. And now at a time when we really need balance and harmony, what's available to us, and how do we do that? And I think part of the awakening, and certainly the Magdalene path, awaken the power of your feminine soul, is about the shift from how women have become so masculinized. We don't even recognize it. And in that same way, like, we've been desexualized and we
Yeah,
don't recognize it, or over sexualized.
that's
It's like,
right.
it's one or the other. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're
One,
always teetering between the virgin and the whore,
you are. That could be the title of this thing. All right. Okay.
Yeah. And we're taught that if we got to teeter on either side, teeter towards the virgin, right? That's the nice girl, that's the good girl. And that's because that's been safe for us. It's been safe for women for 2000 years to be nice and compliant and celibate, or sexually pure in relationship, of course only in marriage. If there's any evidence of any premarital, the marriage is off. I mean, there's a lot of power and control. There's a lot of lineage, or genetic control, I think, going on there, that happens kind of unconsciously, that we don't even know about.
Mhm.
um and then if we teeter, but so we need to be mostly virginal, but like a little bit sexy, but not too sexy. Don't attract anybody else, don't, or attract them, but don't go there with them, but just enough to like excite things in the bedroom. I mean, like the way in which we're like kind of in this, instead of just being able to be in our bodies. That's
That's
what we
right.
lose when we're not sexual. We're kind of cut off from the waist down.
Yeah, we really are. And really even from our skin entirely.
Yeah.
There's so much you're saying that, is food for thought. And one thing that came into me is, to some degree, the virginity thing is a protection of the womb, because
Sure.
the womb has been so marauded
Yeah.
that women have just been like, okay, X marks this, I'm putting an
Yeah.
X on this
Yeah.
area. Chastity belt, do not enter, because
Right.
gosh knows what you might do if you do, because we've had this interdimensional as well as human
Yeah.
invasion and violation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think, in our last few minutes here, though, as our wise women selves and our oracle selves, what are Jesus and Magdalene wanting to say about the bad days that they had together?
The bad days of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. That
Bad
could be the
days of
title.
Jesus and Magdalene, like, I mean, Magdalene might have been like, hey, geez, did you need to overturn the money tables? That was a little bit over the top. All right, come
Right.
on over
Exactly.
here. Let me give you a
What are you thinking?
massage. And then he might have been, who knows what he was saying to her, like, okay, Mag, you were talking a little bit too much in the gathering with Peter. I can't fully blame him for telling you to shut up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if we look at these gospels, that is stuff that is really in there, of like,
Yeah.
he was mad at
Yeah.
Magdalene for talking too much. Jesus did have a little conniption fit in the temple, How was Magdalene around that, right? Um,
Right.
right? So because they were in a human time, they were having this experience in a
Yeah.
hijack. And how could they, what was their main tool for how they would get through it? All right, Claire, that's the $20,000 question. What was their main tool for getting through it? What do you think it was?
I have to feel like it's the path of presence and coming into the heart,
Yeah.
dropping into the chalice of the heart.
Yeah, right? Like they had all the tools to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
back into alignment
Yeah.
when
Get
they were
back into
having a
alignment.
bad day.
And that sort of bridging thing that I talked about, like Magdalene also gave me towards the end of writing the book, a practice called, which I asked her, what's it called? And she never cares anything about marketing whenever I ask her. So she's like, call it whatever you want. Call it the Magdalene blessing. She doesn't kind of talk like that, but that's me. But
Yeah.
and but she just says, so anyway, but that has to do with energy transmission. So I have to feel like, I've always heard it called to me has always been called the way of love and light.
Mm-hmm.
It's been shortened to the way of love because it just sounds too long. I imagine in Aramaic, there's probably a word that meant love and light at the same time. And then as it's gotten translated to, from Aramaic to Greek to this, to that, to English, finally, we'd say the way of love, but it's the way of love and light. So it had to do with, I think, working with certain kinds of healing codes, energy codes, and mastery of certain kinds of meditations that
Yeah.
would, that we would in this day and age call guided visualizations.
Yes.
And I'm kind of seeing something that has to do with working with that six-pointed star image, the triangle from below for the feminine and the triangle or pyramid from above for the masculine. No, wait, vice versa.
Right.
Coming down, coming together.
I'm
Um,
loving this conversation because these are the kinds of conversations we need to have, like a
yeah,
little charla, a little chat with Magdalene and Jesus. It's opening up so much for me for this
yeah,
sacred relationship and sexual healing class, because I think I was a little bit stuck in the like golden aspect of it and like how imperfect I am in that regard. Why am I even teaching this class? And you were like, look, they had their days where it was like they were dealing with sandals that didn't have arch support. They were
right.
walking in the desert. They were tired. There
They
were
had to be tired,
bugs
hot,
and
and sweaty.
hot and
They
sweaty.
did not have hot running water.
Didn't have water. They didn't even have a latrine. So,
Yeah,
it's like they had to deal with the discomforts of the human body, not to mention the emotional irritations and turmoils and when did they turn it off?
yeah,
People are coming up to the tents, whatever. So
yeah.
I love this. Doesn't it just like it's like them sitting among us and going,
Taking the pressure off us,
yeah,
like kind
take
of
the
elevating them, but at the same time also demoting them, kind of simultaneously, like
that's right.
even
Like
as this golden
humanizing.
couple, but also a golden couple that uh, I don't think seeing them as perfect does us any favors.
Right.
No, and they may have been perfect, and I may be wrong about this, but I
Oh,
think seeing them as real people who had real gifts and
that's
real,
right.
yeah,
Well,
they
look,
came in with some real gifts. They did some real training, lots of it. So
yeah,
they were high masters.
yeah. Well, look, if we even look at our gurus today, they're all
Yeah,
messed up in one way or another. Like they have their bad
right,
days. I mean,
right.
um, right? And
You
sometimes,
have your mastery and you have your whoops. I do. I absolutely do.
gosh, I
And
mean,
we can't, I don't think it serves us, them, or the people that are watching, all of you watching this, to come across like, well, my version of sacred relationship is this. And, I think what, watch the front because the back is gonna don't let the back hit you on the way out.
that's right. Exactly. Wow, Claire, this has been so exciting. I love this. I think we just need to break bread with Magdalene and Jesus more often, in groups like this and in
Yeah,
conversations and hopefully with my class as well.
yeah,
To real because that's what's really going to help us. It's their humanity as much as their perfection that's
yeah,
going to help us with our own healing It's not, you know, us measuring ourselves against an impossible standard, which is what's
Yes.
been done like for centuries, millennia with Mother Mary, for example.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
that's
I can
right.
never be as good as her, so why even bother?
Right. Yeah,
Anything else you would like to say about Magdalene? And then we'll hear a little bit more about what you're up to and how people can be in touch with you.
sure. Yeah,
Anything
and
else
I guess I
about
just want to also, what really came to me as you were just speaking, which is beautiful, thank you, is to add to this, is to remember that they were in community. Part of how they navigated what they were navigating is they weren't doing it alone. It wasn't just Jesus doing this thing. It was all of them. I mean, he was certainly the front man. And I
Yeah,
think, and I believe, and, and when he left, we know she was the front woman. And I
yeah,
think when they were together, there was a lot more of her than we've gotten wind of.
yes,
But regardless, they were doing it together. So, she had her circle of sisters to go back to and go like,
that's right.
oy vey, he is not, he's not washing.
You know,
The,
there
the
was a lot of oy veying
there
back
was a
in
lot.
the day. And Mother Mary was there to hold them all. All right. She
That's
was
right.
the mother.
That's right.
They
That's
would
right.
come back to her and she would see them wringing the hands. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I
Okay.
think so I think to remember that too, that they were part of a traveling community and they were part of a bigger community. And those people were both emotionally, I'm imagining in my version of this reality, they were emotionally available, physically available to be helping and supporting. They're doing helping with all the schlepping of the stuff as they're moving from place to place.
That's right.
As we know, is traveling teachers, the schlepping is a thing.
Oh my
Um,
God. So much
there's
so.
Yeah, exactly. There's such a
You're
glamour.
there alone at the end of the day, putting your candles away and what?
Folding tablecloths,
Oh, holy
exactly.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
So there's that, but also energetically, there was a lot of people that were holding this space because they were part of this plan. Like there was a plan, and there were a number of different beings. As you know and have written, taught about, like number of different beings who could bring in this Christed one. Bingo, Mary, little sweet little Mary. No, I think she was quite a powerful
Oh,
little
yeah.
Mary. Um, and but anyway, all those people there were people around them supporting them energetically, and spiritually and whatnot as they were doing all that.
Absolutely. I
But
mean,
you
it
asked about
definitely takes
any
a village.
last words or thoughts that I had to say about
Yeah, just take a
Magdalene.
yeah.
I just really I just really want to thank you for this chance for having this discussion, first of all. Like what I mostly really feel about her is her gratitude that we're bringing this work out, because it was never meant to be about her. It's
Yeah,
not really about her. It's really about us
yeah,
and about using them as guides,
yeah,
using them as way showers. They were way showers.
yeah.
Um, but we're not meant to worship her. My guidance has been very clear on that. She's a teacher and a friend and a companion, and we can go to her. And I offer sessions and I do things like that so that I offer that to people. But part of the reason why she's so in the field right now, she's so active, is because many of us are sensing her and feeling her and have connections to her. And so none of us really have the the market on who Magdalene really was. We all have our individualized expressions based on who we are and what our soul contract is and what we've come here to do.
That's right.
And my job is really to do the best I can to just keep showing up, to remember that it's not about me, that I can be having like a bad hair day and whatever. And I just keep doing the thing and to remind myself and get reminded it's not really about me, and find ways to keep myself inspired. Last year I went through a lot of personal things and hardships, and my work was very quiet. And this year it's like boosh,
Yeah.
it's come back in full force. And to recognize, back last year I was like, maybe this is done. And then I realized, no, it's very much not done. There's just another level of it coming through, another level of it that's available to me. And I think that's happening. Obviously that's happening for you. This course is a big new expression and coming out. Your book later is going to be another one.
Yeah.
We all need to find our ways to do that, because not everybody's going to necessarily be called to do an 8-session course like I do, like you do. Not everybody's going to be called to do private sessions like I do and you do, but that doesn't mean that we can't carry the energy and the essence of the Magdalene and the path of the priestess. I feel like the path of what I call the path of the everyday priestess. Like, we're just priestessing in our life. We're just going through the day and in the checkout line, or sweeping the floor or whatever, and also nourishing and tending to others in whatever ways we do. So
That's beautiful.
it's about bringing ourselves back to being holy,
That's
recognizing our own divinity and our own holiness, and not getting caught in the mainstream noise of the drama and the trauma and the challenges that are very real in the world. But our attention is one of the most powerful and limited resources in a way that we have. It's also unlimited in a certain sense, but we want to know where we want to be mindful of where we put our attention, because what we put our attention on grows. And if we want to create the world that our hearts know is possible, then we want to put it on the things that we're wanting and see it happening, even if it's just in small snippets, to spend time every day focusing on the good,
yeah.
bringing ourselves into presence, being in the chalice of the heart is what I call it. And that's been something new coming through to me just this year. This whole chalice, it's like being in the chalice of the heart. Okay, what is that? Okay, let me explore that. So it's a path of exploration, but I don't feel like it's a path we're meant to do alone. And that's part of why I offer community experiences and classes, as you do.
Yes.
Um,
Tell us what you're up to and how people can get in touch with you.
yeah. So I offer private sessions to connect to Mary Magdalene's energy, and also to support women in owning your own embodied wisdom, to heal the hurts, to heal the stuck places, to move to a life of ease and grace in what I call feminine flow, that we can really start to balance the masculine, get things done, check it off the list, with this place of joy and ease and grace and divine guidance. So really helping people connect to their own divine guidance. So I do private sessions around that. And for those ready to be part of more of a group experience, I have a flagship experience that's online called the Magdalene Path Program. I'll be offering that later on this year.
Yes, indeed.
And for those that want to dip their toes into more regular teachings, meditations, prayer circles, I do a monthly Magdalene Rosary, and I'm offering a book club and meditations through Patreon. It's a really low cost membership that's really intimate. It's quite a small group at this point, and it's really, really lovely. The people who come are deep and wise, and it's a really great circle of sisterhood. And of course, there is the Magdalene Path book. That's also a great place to start. It's available through Amazon. I like to always like to encourage people, support your local booksellers. They can order it. Probably doesn't make me as much money, but I would rather you have your local bookshop. So you can find out a lot more about these things at magdalenepath.com. You can also go to Patreon and search for Magdalene Path. And I'm sure the links will be in the show notes.
They will. We will be
Yeah.
providing various specific links under this video.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. Oh my goodness. Claire, this has been an amazing, we knew that something was going to open up, and maybe about a third to a half of the way in, we were like, wow, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a whole other
Always.
thing that's not
I know.
been
Whenever you and I have gotten together like this, it's always been magic. So I'm always a yes to this. I'll need to, be looking forward to sharing this with people, because I think there's a lot of juicy nuggets here.
a lot of juicy nuggets. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing on the planet, for being such a beautiful, supportive sister. And yes, I'm so glad we had this time. And for everybody, thank you for coming to the Marguerite Rigoglioso YouTube channel. Please check out sevensistersmysteryschool.com for the Sacred Sexual Healing, the Sacred Relationship and Sexual Healing with Magdalene Jesus course, among other things, including, like Claire, I do a monthly circle. It's called the Mary and Magdalene Empowerment Circle. Again,
Mm,
low subscription price where you can each month have a different angled experience of using the sacred journey and the visualization with these two masters to help you in healing in so many different themes and areas of your life. So
sounds
please be
great.
sure, yeah, thank you, Annie. Please be sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel, because that helps this work grow and more people get exposed to it. And thanks for coming to the Bridging Dimension show. All right. And with that, we'll say goodbye for now, right?
Bye
Mwah.
for now. Thanks
Bye.
so much.
Bye.